All right, let's just jump right in. What if I told you the entire story of human civilization, everything we've ever built, written, or thought? Isn't this long, sprawling epic over tens of thousands of years? What if it's actually a much, much shorter story? Today, we're digging into a radical idea that human history is barely a blip on the radar. So, right off the bat, you can see the two competing ideas. The standard model, the one we all kind of grew up with, suggests it took somewhere between 1600 and, well, over 3,500 generations to get all the human diversity we see today. But the source material we're exploring? It claims the real number is closer to just 200. Now, that's not just a small adjustment. That is a completely different story of humanity. So you gotta ask yourself, what's the big problem with the standard timeline? Well, the source we're looking at points to this huge, nagging question. If people with brains just like ours have been walking the earth for 50,000 years, why in the world did they wait for 40,000 of those years to, build a city or write something down or even just plant a farm? The source has this really powerful phrase for that gap. They call it a civilizational dead zone. Just think about that. It suggests that a species that would eventually go to the moon and build computers spent thousands and thousands of generations doing basically nothing that we'd recognize as building a civilization. It's a huge anomaly, a real head-scratcher that the standard model has a tough time explaining. And here's where the critique really digs in. For the standard model to be true, we have to accept that thousands of generations of people came and went without leaving a single name, a single text, or a single civilization behind. The argument here isn't just that the evidence was lost. It's that there's this weird, total, global absence of the very things you'd expect modern human minds to create. It's like, where is everybody? So it all comes back to this one powerful number, 200. The whole argument we're exploring today is anchored right here. It's this idea that our entire story, from the very first people to you and me, fits inside about 200 generational links. That's a chain you can almost picture in your mind, a real list of people. And this quote, man, it just flips the whole script, doesn't it? Instead of this deep, dark, anonymous prehistory that's basically unknowable, this model argues for a short, documented history, from a starting point through real people named in ancient records all the way down to us. Every single person, every culture, it all supposedly branched out within this knowable family tree. Okay, so you're probably wondering, how on earth could all of human diversity pop up in just 200 generations? It seems impossible, right? Well, this model proposes a biological engine to explain it, something called the front-loaded genome. The idea is that the first humans didn't start with some basic genetic code that had to slowly evolve. Instead, they arrived at a genome that was already packed with all the potential for human diversity, just waiting for the right triggers to unlock it. And here's the playbook for how that would have worked. First, imagine a massive global catastrophe. This creates all sorts of intense new environmental pressures, different climates, different foods, you name it. Second, these pressures act like switches, turning on all this latent genetic information that was already hiding in the survivor's DNA. And third, this causes a rapid expression of traits, creating the full spectrum of human diversity in just a few generations, not over thousands of millennia. Let's put these two ideas head to head. Right here. The standard model, on one side, depends on slow, random mutations over at least 50,000 years. The source's model, on the other hand, suggests a rapid, pre-programmed expression from a complex genome, all happening in just a few thousand years. I mean, these aren't just different timelines. They're fundamentally different explanations for who we are. And if you really want to see the difference in speed, just look at this. Standard models calculate that for a single new beneficial trait to become common in a population, it could take over 100,000 years. 100,000. The source argues its mechanism, this epigenetic expression, could produce new traits in as little as a single generation. The difference in scale is it's staggering. And this brings us full circle, right back to that civilizational dead zone. The solution offered here is simple. There was no dead zone. Civilization seems to appear out of nowhere in the archaeological record because it wasn't being invented for the first time, it was being rebuilt. The survivors of this catastrophe weren't starting from zero. They were starting with the memories and knowledge of the world they had just lost. So, based on this idea and a reading of ancient genealogies, the source lays out a very specific timeline.
It suggests the human family tree starts around 5500 BC. Then a global flood hits around 3300 BC. And after that, you see the rise of all the ancient civilizations we know about. It's an incredibly recent and compact version of history.
So, to boil it all down, the big takeaway here is this. The amazing diversity we see in people all over the world isn't the result of brand new genetic information being slowly written over eons. Instead, it's the result of incredibly rich information that was already there from the very beginning, just being rapidly unpacked and expressed. And that really just leaves us with this one final, pretty huge question to chew on. What if our entire history isn't a long, slow climb from some primitive beginning? What if, instead, it's the incredible story of a handful of survivors rapidly rebuilding a broken world? It completely reframes our place in time, and really, the very story of what it means to be human.